We now come to the urgent question. Bob Seeley.
Mr. Speaker, to ask about international supplies of military equipment and ammunition to Ukraine.
Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The UK has been leading international support for the armed forces of Ukraine for 10 years since Russia first invaded Crimea in 2014, training more than 60,000 new recruits since 2015 and committing almost £12 billion in economic, humanitarian and military aid since 2022. From the UK-founded and administered International Fund for Ukraine, which has pledged more than £900 million, to spearheading capability coalitions, our efforts have paved the way and made a genuine difference. Our NLAW anti-tank missiles and our javelins helped brave Ukrainians devastate Putin's menacing 40-mile armoured convoy, which was headed for Kiev. We were the first to send main battle tanks with our Challenger squadron, plus 500 armoured vehicles and 15,000 anti-armour weapons. Last week, the Defence Secretary announced to this House a new package, of 200 Brimstone anti-tank missiles, plus £245 million for artillery munitions. The UK will also co-lead an international capability coalition to supply cutting-edge drones to Ukraine, alongside Latvia, in addition to the UK's co-leadership of the International Maritime Capability Coalition. The Defence Secretary has urged partners and allies to commit to long-term support for Ukraine. At the NATO Defence Ministers meeting on the 15th of February, the Defence Secretary, with his counterparts from 14 NATO allies and Sweden, signed an agreement on 2 new multinational procurement initiatives, or MPIs, focusing on munitions and missiles. Spearheaded by the UK, these initiatives aim to increase defence industrial capacity across the Euro-Atlantic area, replenish stockpiles at pace and continue support to Ukraine.
Bob Seeley.
Government for its impressive record. But does he accept that equipment pledged by NATO nations is not reaching Ukraine in anything like the amounts promised? Does he accept, for example, that out of 1 million shells promised by EU nations, something like less than a third have arrived? Over 300 artillery barrels are reaching the end of their productive life this year. Very few F-16 pilots are being trained, and the Ukrainians are perilously short of air defence. This is at a time when the Russians are now on war footing. 40% of all government spending is geared towards the destruction of the Ukrainian state. Specifically, Mr. Speaker, may I ask whether Defence Intelligence, the government, reckons that the Ukrainians will be able to hold their current positions? If so, for how long? And when will artillery stocks run even lower and fall off a cliff edge? To confirm that we have delivered on all our pledges. To ask, I was in East Ukraine last week, after the obliteration of the frontline town of Avdiivka, does he understand that Ukrainians are now asking which of our towns is next to be destroyed by Russian artillery, and that Ukrainian soldiers are dying because they lack kit? And finally, Mr. Speaker, does he accept that this is becoming an acutely dangerous situation for everybody, because the forces of fascism are beginning to overpower free states and their NATO allies? And where does he believe we may be in the next few months in terms of security throughout Europe? Thank you.
Well, first of all, Mr. Speaker, I'm extremely grateful to my honourable friend, and I pay tribute to him and all parliamentarians who visited Ukraine and shown our solidarity and support with our ally. I know that he has a background as an officer in the Intelligence Corps, and obviously, therefore, he speaks with not only the passion that we all share, but significant expertise on these matters. Equally, he will therefore be aware that there is a limit, clearly, to what I can say on the operational situation, and indeed in terms of, for example, being drawn into trying to estimate the level of supplies going forward, etc. These are all sensitive and important points. I think what we can all agree on, it's important what he says about air support and training. I was in RAF Valley very recently. As I understand, we've trained 26 Ukrainians there, or are training them, sorry, for elementary flying training. Of course, we aren't flying the F-16, we have Typhoon F-35, so other countries will be providing the actual platforms. In terms of air defence, he's absolutely right. This is a critical part of the conflict. We need to supply more. We've provided over 1,000 air defence systems, but we want to do more. In terms of the overall position, as I said, we can't provide, if you like, a running commentary on the exact operational situation. We do provide these very regular tweets showing what we can share in terms of intelligence. But I think fundamentally, he is right to warn all of us and indeed our allies of the risk were the situation to be reversed, because we do know, we can certainly say with some certainty, that when the war started, perhaps we would all have been surprised to be in this situation with Ukraine having won back so much territory and frankly remained in the fight. And that is thanks in a huge part to the role of the United Kingdom, Mr. Speaker, and we should be very proud of that. As the Secretary of State confirmed in his very recent oral statement, we provided NLAW weapons before Russia invaded. We have been training Ukrainians since 2014, 60,000 in total, but I know there's more to do. What I would highlight to my honourable friend, as I said, he has a very good understanding of these matters. These capability coalitions, one on drones, the other on maritime, are a very good way that we can take the support that's provided and turn it into targeted and effective capability at the front line. But we're clear we need to do more, and our allies need to stay with us in the fight.